Right, what's up? Welcome back to another YouTube video. In this video, I'm breaking down Shelby Sapp's funnel that cash collected $5 million in literally the first month of 2026. And in this video, I'm breaking down the exact systems, the positioning, the content, the funnel, and how it's psychologically connected with the buyer that she made $5 million in a month. Now, I want to be clear. The only reason I'm making this video is because this module that she's using is actually applicable. You don't need her audience size or the same ad budget as her to run this system, right? Even if you're a coaching business doing less than 50K a month, there'll be loads of stuff that you can learn from this video and actually apply them in your own business today. So the first thing to understand about Shelby is that she didn't try to stand out by being loud with everyone, right? I always say there are two ways to generate value. You can go broader and have more topics with what you help people with, or you can go deeper. High ticket sales coaching is one of the most saturated spaces in online business right now. There are hundreds of people selling variations of the same fucking program, right? So rather than competing at a surface level, she went 3 levels deep into her positioning. She sells high ticket sales especially for women, another step deeper, who want the Porsche lifestyle. Now, the Porsche lifestyle or the girl boss lifestyle is a domain in itself that she have made that her audience is clearly aware of. So she gave that lifestyle a name. It's kind of similar to what Brett Scales did to freelance brand scaling. Like in real life, he's literally running ads, right? By having a different name for it, he basically becomes the one of one in that market, right? And she kind of did the same, but from the desire perspective. So the girl boss lifestyle means the income, the freedom, the aesthetic that comes with it, and everything that literally Shelby Sapp shows off. So once you go that deep, you stop competing with everyone else in that space because nobody else owns the exact category as you. And that is the real value of niche positioning. It's not about narrowing her audience. It's about creating a category where you're the only logical option for a very specific person. So another thing happening here is that she's selling an identity, not a skill, right? Her audience isn't just buying a sales training. They are buying a versions of themselves, right? And this term of selling an identity is just overused in my opinion, and I don't feel like most people understand how valuable and what this actually means to selling an identity. So let me make it make more sense right now, because that can become such a strong reason to purchase than the information alone, right? Rolex does that. Rolex sells you an identity. Apple products, you can name any big brand, and at a very core level, that's what they are doing, right? Selling an identity. Now, what do I actually mean by selling identity? Coaching in simple terms is when you help someone transition in a domain of their life, right? And the reason I want you to have this before and after positioning and subconsciously project that in the audience's mind that you have been in their shoe as well is because the moment you do that, you basically become an idol for the person at the very lowest and the person one step behind from your current state. So even Ghazi has done it. Tamoji always talks about how he lost millions of dollars, not because they want to look stupid, but because that's what they want you to feel like, that they have been into your shoe as well and they know exactly how to come out of that situation. A very common misconception with niching down is that people think that the niche that you own is the only people you can talk to, right? And that is not true. At a broader level, all she does is teach sales, right? And I want you to look at it and treat it like a funnel. So at the very top is the majority of her audience. So she teaches sales, right? And at the middle, she teaches only to women. And at the very bottom, that's when the personality traits comes in. Now, the best thing that she does, and any creator or online business owner should be doing, funnel as many people down as possible. And all of the creators are doing it. For example, Alex Ramoji, right? He talks about how you should be logged in, how you should be working 24/7, right? That's just his brand, right? And by talking about it, he attracts customer in that sort of characters, right? So at the top, you need to make sense to the majority, right? And then by making sense to them, once you have their attention, that's when you start funneling them down. And that's when you start installing your beliefs into their personalities and kind of make the outcome that your offer delivers. You make that outcome their desire by installing those similar beliefs. And likewise, her top of the funnel content is very little to do with sales. She's posting herself in Milan, talking about things her audience finds interesting, and very little to do with education and sales. Nothing promotional especially. And the reason for that is straightforward. As I said, the job of top of the funnel content is to get discovered and build familiarity, and that's it. It's not to educate, and it's definitely not to convert. It's simply to get people to see her face enough times that when they eventually do land on her page, it already feels familiar to them. And it's similar to what's called mere exposure effect. So the more someone is exposed to you, the more they naturally trust you over time. So the lifestyle content isn't random. Most people think it is. Even for Iman Ghazi, people think, why is he posting that? Because it's doing a specific fucking job, which is building the type of low level familiarity that makes everything else in the lower part of the funnel work better. Now, am I saying you should be doing it when you're just starting out? Absolutely fucking not. Because that's probably the least effective thing to do from a beginner perspective. But once you have a sizable audience, you need to grow it. And the fastest way to grow that audience is by making top of the funnel content and attracting more total addressable market to your page, and then eventually funneling them down to where the clients exist. And that part gets broader and broader the more top of the funnel content you make. So the moment you land on her Instagram page, that's where it gets interesting, because her Instagram profile is genuinely engineered from top to bottom. Literally nothing there is random. So at the very top, her bio does 3 things. It says that she's the #1 female sales trainer, and then immediately offers a free live webinar as the next step. Now that low resistant entry point matches literally more than people give it credit for, because even the coldest lead can enter the funnel, because she's just asking them to show up for a free fucking training, literally no risk. And then she's got 6 videos pinned on her profile, 3 on the feed and 3 on the Reels tab, and each one has a specific job in moving the viewer from knowing her, so the coldest prospect, to actually trusting her. Some of the posts are dismantling the fake guru skepticism that's everywhere literally in the space right now. So if you're selling a course, you're most likely to be called a guru within the first month you start selling the course. And some of the other posts are telling her origin story in a way that makes success feel achievable, once again positioning herself at the lowest level, so the viewer or the coldest lead feels like, okay, if she does that, she probably know everything that I need to do in order to get to a similar position as her. And then some of the posts are pulling in people who are at the very edge of becoming interested in sales as a career path. So the whole thing is a structured psychological path, right? And it's happening inside a 6 video grid that most people just scroll past without realizing how intentional it was. Now the next thing is the story highlight, and trust me, the story highlights are worth talking about separately, because this is one of the clearest examples of understanding what actually converts. All the highlights are student wins, simple, packaged in 3 different formats: video testimonials, which is very rarely seen nowadays, and then the image sequences, and finally documented journey posts that follow a student from where they started through to the outcome they got from the program, of course. So social proof at this level doesn't just validate the offer, it gives a viewer a mental kind of a picture of their own potential transformation, right? Especially the last one, where someone watching a full journey sequence from day 1 of joining and isn't just the proof that it works, they are literally imagining themselves in the story. Once again, this is a major part of how she sells you an identity. And also some people only use screenshots from their past clients as social proofs on their websites or stories, but you need to understand that the audience is being sourced from a video focused platform, so they clearly prioritize the video content over text. Only talking about YouTube and Instagram, of course. If they're on X or emails, they are literally more text driven, and they prefer to consume content in written format. But again, the best thing is just to utilize both, just like Shelby. The next thing is her content. The content is structured in 3 stages, and it's worth understanding what each stage is actually doing in her funnel. The top of the funnel content we already covered, which is lifestyle, discovery, familiarity. And then the middle of the funnel content, these are the videos that speak to frustrations that her audience already had. Then talking about wanting more than the traditional path offers, and then of course bridging those frustrations towards high ticket sales as the answer, and positioning her mechanism as like a bridge. That's what Iman Ghazi did with his YouTube VSL funnel. That's what Brad Scales do with his paid webinars, and that's exactly what Shelby's doing as well. And I actually covered all of those funnels in my recent YouTube video as well. I'll link that on the top right corner as well if you want to watch it. It's even more in depth compared to this one, so make sure you check it out. And then finally, the bottom of the funnel content is most targeted, with things like frame control, objection handling, specific sales tactics to look credible and actually achieve the expert state. And these videos get far fewer views than the top of the funnel content, but they make way more money per view, because the only person watching them already has the problem and is actively looking for the best person to solve, and they're actually solution aware as well, because that's why they have interest in learning about sales. So she just have to move them 1 stage and show them her product, and they're pretty much sold, meaning they are actively looking for best person to solve their problems. That's actually another point that's genuinely worth internalizing, that a video with 57k views from the right exact audience will convert a lot better than a video with 240k views or 2 million views from a mixed audience, right? So optimizing purely for views is the wrong game, especially if you're selling anything high ticket. Now, once someone has gone through enough of her content and they're ready to take the next step, she drives them to a free live masterclass. And the landing page is clean. There's a countdown to the next live date, a clear explanation of what to actually expect, and then an opt-in for name, email, and phone numbers, and nothing complicated, of course. What most people underestimate is what happens between the opt-in and the webinar itself. So she sends a sequence of emails that includes case studies, student results, or more content of what they are going to learn. And all of these three coming from an angle that increase the perceived value of the webinar. So all of these is doing the same job, which is increasing trust before she ever asks for anything. Also, the reason of increasing the perception of the webinar is important because the conversions are based on how many people show up on the webinar and actually consume the webinar, because that is when they are ready to actually be pitched at the first place. And again, the last video is where I talked about my personal strategies that I use to make sure we maximize the show ups and the consumption of the webinar. Now, the webinar runs for 60 to 90 minutes. She talks about her frameworks, then opens the last 30 minutes for questions, of course, and handles objections in real time on the webinar at scale, because literally everyone in the webinar is listening, her answering the questions that they have or the objections they have, and then closes people into a Typeform application. And then from there, the sales team takes the application, qualifies the lead, book them onto a call, and runs a pre-call nurturing sequence via emails and even WhatsApp in these days, similar to a pre-webinar nurturing sequence. But again, it's a bit different. They both have different purpose, of course. So they show up on the call already sold on the mechanism, on Shelby as a coach, and on themselves that they can actually achieve what Shelby promises. So that's the whole process. And with that being said, that was it for today's video. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.